Believers, to another episode of the Stamford Sync, where we are syncing up with everything Chelsea FC. And it is my distinct pleasure today to bring one of my transatlantic cousins all the way from the other side of the pond, and we are going to get him some talk about some Chelsea. So this is Mason from Blues and Stripes. Mason, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good. Look forward to hopefully toppling the Reds on Wednesday.
Yeah,
be very nice.
Yeah, I'm hoping so, man. I'm hoping so. It's been a bit dry for Chelsea fans recently, hasn't it?
Absolutely, especially when it comes to the domestic cups too.
And also just like giving Arsenal fans no more reason to laugh at us, rather as much as they already are. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I did a reaction to my own predictions video today, and I put Arsenal in fourth, just below Chelsea in third, and I was just like, oh man, so there was so much hope.
Yeah, I might have also put Arsenal in fourth at the beginning of the season, so it's been a rough season for us in that sense, as far as Arsenal is concerned.
Yeah, it's one of them things, isn't it? Like, I just desperately want Man City to win the league now. I predicted that at the start of the season, and now I'm just like, save me, City. You are my only hope. Like, I absolutely need that to happen.
Pretty much.
So, Mason, for any of my viewers that might not know you, tell us a little bit about your channel and why did you choose Chelsea FC?
Well, my channel is Blues and Stripes, outside of the obvious pun of, Stars and Stripes. Blues for Chelsea, Stripes because I live in Georgia, so I do follow Atlanta United occasionally, and I will talk about them occasionally as well, but we've just not been in a good place of late. So I'll typically do reviews and previews for the games and then talk about any major news, obviously like a manager leaving, and try to make it entertaining and fun, as well as just give my opinions and then ask for other people's opinions as well, because I love to have discussions and debates about all those types of topics. As far as why I chose Chelsea, I was actually raised in a Chelsea household. My dad, when he was a kid, his coach went over to London, got his whole team Chelsea jerseys to play, and so they were called Chelsea. And so he kept up with them ever since he was a kid. Back in his day, the only way to do that was to just look at the papers in the sports section and find out where all the teams were. He talks about a couple of times, he didn't know about relegation back then. So a couple of times Chelsea weren't in the top tier. Yeah. It's like, where's Chelsea? I don't understand.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he raised me, loved watching him play. He played professional indoor soccer here. Fun little tidbit. He actually played and was roommates with Mark Pulisic, who's Christian Pulisic's father.
Yeah, sweet.
I asked him, I'm like, hey, are you going to reach out whenever Christian joined Chelsea? And then he hadn't talked to him in years. He's like, I don't want to be that type of person.
Yeah, no, that's fair, man. That's fair. No, that's really cool, man. It's like there's such a massive growing thirst for football in America. And I appreciate already you haven't said the word soccer once. So you're already off to a good start.
It's one of those things I have to say soccer whenever I'm talking to people here because they don't. Of course. It's not registered, but anytime I am talking to somebody that's over in Europe, I'm like, I can call it football, thank God, because we kick it with our feet. It makes much more sense.
I mean, the goalkeeper, there's throw-ins and stuff. There's some hands involved, but yeah, I guess it's one of those, isn't it? One thing I really like about your channel, I've been watching for a little while, is you get quite into the nitty-gritty of the tactics and positional stuff, and what goes wrong. Like, I'm a bit of a vibes guy. Like, I'm good with stats and stuff, but I really appreciate your proposed ability to read the game. So, where does that come from? Like, where does the stat-hungry analysis come from?
So some of it, I was kind of a math nerd in high school, so I do enjoy the numbers and all of that. But I always did feel like whenever I played, because I did play throughout my childhood and high school, I played a little bit of amateur after I graduated, but I feel like I was always able to read the game really well. Growing up watching mostly Chelsea, it really helped me see the game on a real tactical level. So I feel like that's kind of just how I view the game. I suppose it's just mostly how my brain works. I'm able to see, outside of what does this player do in that moment, it's also what leads up to that moment. Especially because I played defense, some defenders, I can look at them and go, okay, well, he made a great tackle, great interception and all that, but why was he in that position to begin with? Some defenders, I think, they get a lot of plaudits for their great tackling, but nobody really looks at the fact that, well, they got themselves into that last-ditch tackle because they didn't read the runner coming in behind them and basically let them into that position. So, I don't know. I know I'm a little weird for that. I know not everybody likes to look at the game in that way. But it's just for me seeing the problems as well as seeing the good stuff. I think it allows you to, sorry about that. Anytime you do win a match, you can look at the problems and go, all right, but what can we grow on from here? Because we won, it's great. But if we don't look at what we did wrong in the match as well, those problems can come back to bite us in a future match too. So
yeah, nice, man. Nice. It's one of the things I love about being a football content creator is everyone's got their own different way of looking at the game. Some people are really vibesy and some people are really into the stats and like you say, positional play and really figuring out kind of how everything ticks. So that's cool. So let's talk about our team then. Let's talk about Chelsea, shall we? So there's 3 big things that I'll be interested to get your opinion on at the beginning, just to kind of see where your general head's at with it. Obviously, it's all chaos and drama at the moment for Chelsea, isn't it? So we'll do them one at a time. One of them, I guess, is kind of a twofer. How did you feel about the sacking of Enzo Maresca? We'll start with that.
So on my channel, obviously, if you look at any of my thumbnails, you'll see Maresca out on some of them. Part of it was I did say after the Leeds match that if he played Tosin again, I was going to put Maresca out on all my thumbnails from then on. And so after the Atalanta match, it's kind of just what I did. Maresca as a manager, last season, I wasn't entirely convinced with him.
Mm-hmm.
I thought we ended the season well. He started the season well, but that winter period really showed his flaws, in my opinion. The lack of adaptability, the lack of being able to rotate properly, I feel like was really exposed. Over the summer, obviously, great win in the Club World Cup. We saw some of his heights in those moments because I think he does set us up tactically very well against a lot of the bigger teams. But then we get back into this season and those flaws are once again still there. He's not rotating very well. I feel like he's still not setting us up to be able to break down low blocks. So there's a lot about his game that made me go, I'm just not seeing him grow as a manager. And obviously he's still young, so there's a lot of places for him to go. And I have no doubt that someday he will be a really good manager. But I just was worried for where we want to be because we are, year 4 now into this project with the new ownership.
Yeah, 4 years. Yeah.
So I feel like this was where, last season made top 4, kind of had a little bit of a title challenge, but then dropped off halfway through. This season, I wanted to see more of a title challenge.
Same again. It was worse this season, isn't it? Even worse.
Exactly.
No, it's really interesting. Like, I 100% agree with you. So I've never been Maresca out. Well, I wasn't ever Maresca out. The only manager in recent history that I've just been like, get out of my club was Graham Potter. 38% win percentage is awful. Do you know what I mean? That was really, really bad.
Absolutely.
So with Maresca, my whole thing was like, obviously, he can beat the big teams. You see he's developing a style and starting to build a culture at the club and stuff. And I'm like, right, that's awesome. I didn't want him to get out, but I desperately wanted him to improve on the obvious flaws in his game, right? Obviously, panicking seemed to be one of them, like with the substitutions. And there was another, like, Leicester fans warned us about Enzo Maresca. Do you know what I mean? It was really interesting because although we didn't see much of it in the first season, I feel like what we've seen this season is the Enzo Maresca that Leicester fans warned us about, where they were like, it was great at the start of the season, we were banging goals in and stuff, but towards the back end of the season, he just wouldn't adapt his style of play at all. And it got really frustrating. And I feel like that's just exactly what happened with us now. It was like, like you say, constantly playing Tosin Adarabioyo, although there are some questions to be asked about how much BlueCO were involved in that. I'm not really sure about all that. But at the same time, it was just like, I did a really interesting video with my friend Kai, and we looked at a table. It was like a grid of areas of domination, and we completely dominated the wings, but we didn't even contest any of the centre spots. Do you know what I mean? So it was just really frustrating, like constantly funneling it out to Pedro Neto on the right and Garnacho on the left, and then ultimately having no one threatening in the middle. So it's just like, yeah, cool, we have it on the wings all the time. So yeah, that in particular I did find quite frustrating with him. So that neatly will, I guess, lead us on to the current manager, Liam Rosenior. What do you make of him so far?
So watched a little bit of his press conference. Seems very personable. I do think one thing that will help him that, in my opinion, it did hurt Maresca is the language barrier that Maresca had. I do think that at times did make some of what he said, it was hard to tell for the fans' sake what he was trying to say. I know, for example, like the whole Palmer sub in the last game, that frustrated a lot of Chelsea fans because previously he had just said that he was 100% fit, and then you're still subbing him out. So I'm hoping with Rosenior not having that language barrier will help, I guess, the accessibility for the fans, getting to know what he's actually trying to say in a lot of those moments. From the first match, I did a little funny intro for the review for that one.
Yeah, with the baby and that was jokes, man. I like
that. Because it's hard to really judge him based on going up against Charlton. They're not an easy team by any stretch, championship side, but it is a lesser team. Mm-hmm. He did put out basically what we saw from Maresca, which is a mostly rotated lineup. But tactics-wise, I do see some similarities with Maresca, just the way that we did like to try to dominate the possession once again, kind of knocked it around. Those first few minutes, very similar to what we saw from Maresca, just no penetration. But as the game went on, we did see a little bit more of that ability to get the ball down the field quickly, which we did see under Maresca at times as well. Mm-hmm. And I did like his subs. I feel like the subs did help us be a little bit more progressive and a little bit more deadly once we got into that final third. Yeah. And I think the biggest thing for me, though, is I watched Adam Cleary Football Channel. Yeah. He did a little video about Rosenior, and I think one thing he pointed out that I'm hoping we'll see a lot of is the adaptability, his willingness to change lineups, his willingness to maybe try a couple different styles. I think that's something that Maresca really, really lacked. So I'm hoping if Rosenior can have that adaptability, it'll help us in some of those matches where the low block is there. The way we're playing isn't quite working. So he'll make a sub, make a tactical tweak, and we'll see us hopefully turn the match around.
Yeah, man. Yeah, definitely. I think it's really interesting with Rosenior because he wasn't given much of a chance by pundits and content creators and stuff. And, it's obvious to see why. But at the same time, it's like from that first press conference, I don't think I've ever seen people change their mind so quickly. Do you know what I mean? He delivered that first press conference. And for me, he has already something that I really wanted from Maresca, and that was like character. Do you know what I mean? One of the main issues I had with Maresca outside of the tactics and the difficulty of the football and stuff was he kind of defaulted to like throwing players under the bus, and I didn't find that he was very ready to take accountability a lot of the time when he'd made a mistake and stuff, like in the Man United loss, and do you know what I mean, with some of the subs and the crazy stuff that we've done. And do you know what I mean, I found very often he'd be like, oh yeah, well, Badiashile was rubbish, and this player wasn't good enough and that player wasn't good enough. And
that's honestly, sorry to cut you off, but that's kind of why I'm not sure. You mentioned how much the board was involved and what he was doing on the pitch and all that. Like, I know some of that is coming from him and his camp. Yeah. So I do kind of take a 50-50 stance on it. I think the board does want to be involved. We are hearing a lot about these sporting directors that they feel like they could be managers too, type of thing. So I do think there is a lot of involvement. I do think there was a lot of suggestions given to him, but I don't know how much of it was him being forced to make those decisions and how much of it was he was making the decisions because that's what he was told, and he was just like, well, fine, I'm just going to do what you say then, and not really push him back.
I'm kind of with you, man. Like, I obviously the conversation is rampant at the moment about the board, and obviously there's a lot of like Ekbali out and Clearlake out and stuff. It's interesting, you mentioned it already, actually. So the Cole Palmer substitute at Bournemouth, I think, was a really telling one. So that is something that I do believe the board were involved in to an extent, because there is a lot of noise to say that the medical staff are telling him Cole Palmer can only play for 60 minutes. Wesley Fofana can only play one game a week. And there are some of these things, obviously because we've had so many injured players and stuff as well, it'll probably be the same with Lavia and Esugo now. He's just come back. But I do believe, for instance, that because obviously he took him off the game before, I can't remember who it was against, and Cole Palmer looked absolutely like really, really frustrated about being taken off. But in the Bournemouth game, he was just like, yeah, whatever. So I do believe that substitution was a result of the ownerships or the medical staff being like, right, Cole Palmer can't play more than 60 minutes still because of the groin injury. So I do believe that, but I don't necessarily believe in the wider idea that he's being told what tactics to play, who to play. The minutiae of it is really that deep. Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting one, and kind of leads us on to something else I wanted to talk about a bit, just the BlueCO model and stuff in general, man. I think it's like, a lot of people are saying, Enzo Maresca was a yes man, and Liam Rosenior is a yes man, and this, that, and the other. So what do you think of BlueCO and the model, and do you think that it is going to get success, or do you think that we are just kind of flogging a dead horse at the moment?
It's tough because on the one hand, I mean, I have been BlueCO out before. There is a part of me that is still frustrated by the model. I think transfer-wise, I'm still up in the air about it because I'm somebody who I do think we need some more experience. There was some talk about maybe Silva coming back to the club. I thought that would have been great. I don't think he would have played, but just having that experienced head, I think would help our defense massively. So I do think the transfer model at the moment, I don't really agree with still, but at the same time, I do see they've gone and gotten some really talented players. I look at like Cucurella, Caicedo, would never have thought 2 years ago that they would be the players that they are now. So clearly they're scouting really well and they're doing a good job of finding those types of players. I think manager-wise, I understand the idea of you want to go get a young manager who will grow, who will learn. But at the same time, because we also have a young squad, it kind of feels like everybody is just kind of learning and there's no real experienced heads that can take the team in those moments whenever things do get tough. People talk about the lack of discipline, the lack of, I guess, desire and grit to turn things around. I definitely do think there is something to be said about that. But I will say, to defend the board a little bit, they have brought in some really good players. And I think when you look at, talking about the medical staff, I think Reece James is a great example. Maresca listened to the medical staff about Reece James, and now this is the most he's been fit since he started having injury problems.
I do think his change in positions played a massive part of that as well, though. I feel like if we'd have put Reece James back as a marauding right back / right wing back, then that injury issue, because it's a hamstring injury, probably would have occurred a lot more often. But as he was essentially playing as a right centre back for a lot of the time, and has obviously now kind of almost fully transitioned into a midfielder, he's doing a lot less running. So, I think that's definitely part of it. But you're right, 100% there. There's a win there, isn't there? Having Reece James back, and we've seen those magic moments of quality where Reece James is just able to turn a game on his head or get us back in it. And he was so good against Arsenal when we were 10 men down and stuff. Do you know what I mean? So you would have to think part of it is like, look at the success of Reece James coming back, and that same medical team were the ones that are the ones that are suggesting that Cole Palmer doesn't play for more than 60 minutes at the moment and stuff like that. Because
I will say we don't want Palmer to turn this into a long running issue, because we want him to be back 100%. We've seen since he's come back, he's not quite been fully fit. And so he's been a lot less of a player because of it. So I think there's good and bad. Where I am right now, I think for a senior, because he does seem to be a competent manager, he is still young. I think if this one doesn't work, then it's time for BlueCO, the board, whoever's making these decisions, it's time for them to look at this model of trying to get a young manager with a young squad and go, maybe this isn't working, because this is going to be 2 in a row.
Definitely. Well, Graham Potter was a reasonably young manager at the end of the day as well. Do you know what I mean? And I'd say the most experienced manager we've had has been Mauricio Pochettino since they sacked Tuchel. But he obviously, and this is part of the issue, right? Like the manager thing, I think is fascinating at the moment. I see that this generation of winning managers isn't available anymore. And if you look at all of the top jobs, well, bar 3, Man City have got Pep. Barcelona have got Hansi Flick. Well, there's more, Diego Simeone at Atletico Madrid and Hansi Flick at Barcelona. Other than that, it's all young managers. You look at the Premier League, man. Liverpool, Arne Slot. Arsenal, Arteta. Tottenham went for Thomas Frank, even though that's not worked particularly well for them. Man United went for Amorim, and now Michael Carrick has just been confirmed today as well. Right. So it's going to have to, I think the only way the model can change is getting some more experienced players in. I think that would work now, but I think that would work in the future as well. I think the problem is with Chelsea have kind of had all of the big experienced winning managers and ruined our relationships with all of them. Do you know what I mean?
True.
So I think I think there isn't really an option to go out for, there are really a handful of managers that have got winning pedigree. Like Allegri, Simeone, do you know what I mean? A couple of these guys, but ultimately, I don't think any of them are going to look at the model and the club and the way things are and be like, yeah, I can do that. Do you know what I mean? I think the only thing we can do is kind of get a young manager like Maresca Rosenior. So I think that's just, I think the playing staff idea can change. Like, I really want to see us go in for some experience in the summer. Do you know what I mean? I think if we want to challenge for a title, we need a centre-back, a midfielder, and a striker, maybe a backup striker or someone like Olivier Giroud. Do you know what I mean? We need a Giroud. We need maybe bring back Antonio Rudiger or like, a Thiago Silva type. Just some guys around there that can kind of like keep a lid on the heat a little bit when things are getting tough and bring a winning mentality to the squad as well.
Well, did you see, because Joe Cole mentioned something about this, talking about just the new transfer strategy, just talking about when he was coming through Chelsea, it wasn't just, a bunch of young players. There was the experience that helped him develop into the player he was.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think while we have a lot of talent there, obviously Cucurella probably the best left back in the league on his day, Caicedo best defensive mid. A lot of these players, they are already at the top, but that experience that your teammates can bring to help you grow even more. We've seen from Caicedo a couple of moments of maybe losing his head this season.
Yeah, for sure.
I think those are the moments whenever you want the experience to take this really talented young players and help them realize, all right, we need to calm it down here.
No, definitely, man. I think it's definitely something we've been missing. Do you know what I mean? Caicedo is a really interesting example of that because what Caicedo has got is talent and ability for sure. But it's little things, man, like play acting after you fouled someone, like something's gone wrong with you. And whenever he gets fouled, he gets down and rolls around on the floor like it's the end of the world and stuff. Do you know what I mean? There's a few things I feel like a little bit of an older head just to give you a little clip round the ear and be like, look, none of that, man. None of that. I understand it to an extent. Like there is a dark part of the game, whereas if you think you can make something look like a foul, then you probably will because it can give your team an advantage. Like at the core of it, of course, that's the thing. But yeah, like you say, and you mentioned it as well, the discipline. Do you know what I mean? The discipline stuff, all of the cards that are going on at the moment is absolutely ridiculous, man. And yeah, like I would have loved to have got Thiago Silva back. Obviously, ended up going to Porto, but having someone in and around like that, I've heard that Trevor Chalobah supposedly spends a reasonable amount of time still talking to Rudiger, trying to get him to come back. So something like that. And it doesn't have to be super expensive either for me. Do you know what I mean? We don't need to go out and spend 80 million on an experienced player. I think it is just about experience, winning mentality, something like that. Do you know what I mean? And a few of those in the spine of the squad will really help push us on. Like it is worrying that our oldest player is Tosin. And I think he's 27, 28, something like that. Yeah, that's just crazy. Like, obviously, Raheem Sterling's in the wings, but he's probably, not going to be hanging around, let's be completely honest. So, yeah, man. So, with BlueCO, do you think, because obviously, I don't know if you know, there are protests planned just before the Brentford game on the 17th. Are you like BlueCO out because you were Maresca out? Do you know what I mean? Does that extend to the ownership for you as well? Or do you think that they need to be given more time?
So, I mean, in my more heated, passionate moments, absolutely, I'm BlueCO out.
Yeah.
I think when I really sit down and think about it, I think this, for me, Rosenior is kind of the last chance for them. If this does go wrong, there needs to be some serious changes. I was already pretty frustrated with the Pochettino situation. I know not a lot of Chelsea fans wanted to have him because of the Spurs connection. Yeah. But by the end of the season, I thought we finally got to see a little bit of what having an experienced manager can bring. Yeah. Because in my opinion, the reason why we're seeing the best of Cucurella, Caicedo, Palmer is because of what he did by the end of the season with them. So I think whenever he ended up leaving because of the way the club is set up, because of the issues he had with the sporting directors, I was frustrated with that. With Maresca, obviously, we're seeing he had issues with the sporting directors and the board as well. So clearly there's something that is making these managers want to leave. So I understand why there's a lot of people that have issues with the board because it doesn't feel like a system that's going to keep managers around. But that being said, I do see the potential just because I look at Man U's a great example of, I look at Ineos and go, they don't know what they're doing. Outside of the managers that they're appointing that don't quite fit with the players that they have, I also don't feel like the recruitment is good either. I look at the players that Man U has. Their players are not good enough to compete at the top level. I think our board has set us up with players that are capable of competing for the title in maybe a year with one or two more additions. So I'm kind of on the fence about it. I think, let's see what Rosenior is able to do. Let's see how they back him, next year, depending on obviously how the rest of this season goes. And if it can grow from here, fantastic. They've done a great job. If not, then I will probably be joining everybody else with the protests and everything.
Yeah, I think for me, it's almost more like I'm not like, it's not that I wouldn't like to see someone else in charge. I think the thing with Chelsea fans in particular, because we had Roman, and despite, whatever perceived flaws you might think about Roman in the grand scheme of things, the reason we loved him is because he was a football guy. Do you know what I mean? And that was so rare, man. That was so rare to be able to have an owner who was like a fan at the same time. So I look at all of the other owners in the Premier League at the moment, and there's no one else like that. Do you know what I mean? So I think almost there's like a false dichotomy almost where we compare what we've got now to Roman because we had him, but in the grand scheme of owners, like Roman was a unicorn. Do you know what I mean? And it's a difficult one. So I'm not screaming BlueCO out at the top of my lungs, but 100%, like, I want to see change. And I've mentioned it before. The protests and stuff, I absolutely respect people's right to protest, and I think we should, man. Do you know what I mean? I think it's not something I'll be attending myself, but I do believe that, if Egg Barley and Clear Lake and the model seem to be the problem at the moment, I think the only thing for me is I think the likelihood of them actually leaving is quite low. But if the protests can influence positive change in the model, put in a winning philosophy before a financial one and stuff like that, do you know what I mean? I genuinely believe that, we could still, and you kind of said it, man, like, I guess with the recruitment, it's maybe been a bit of a case of a broken clock is right twice a day. Do you know what I mean? It's like when you buy 60 players, which is in and around where we're at now, 60, 70 players, some of them are going to have to be good, aren't they? I actually made a list a little while ago. I'm going to do a video about it at some point, but I've made a list of every single BlueCO signing so far and put them into categories of like flop, asset, which was basically just someone who was bought in order to be sold later on, ones that have done okay, and ones that are like elite. The elite obviously is the smallest category, but the ones that are okay are a really small category. The larger, I would say like 80-85% of the entire list has either been assets to try and make money from or just absolute flops. So I think even, they've just got to look at their own success rate at this point, haven't they? And it's like, when you spent 100 mil on Moises Caicedo, that went really well. When you spent 60 mil on Marc Cucurella, that went really well. But ultimately, it's the little things as well. It's like the 20 mil on David Washington, the 20 mil on Amari Kellyman. Do you know what I mean? Just to make the Matson deal go through and stuff. Like, these are the things that really aren't working and ultimately are hindering their own ability to spend on players that actually can influence the squad. So yeah, man, like I say, I'm not like staunch BlueCO out because, and it's not because I wouldn't like to see someone else. I just think the realism is they're probably not going to go until at least the end of their current proposed tenure, which is the 2031, I think, because that's Project 2030 is the whole thing, isn't it? I will say two final thoughts on that. For the idea of the financial and buying players just to be assets, I do agree that it's becoming a bit much as we're doing it. Yeah. But in their defense, as much as I'm a big Roman fan as well. I obviously grew up when he took over the club, basically. Yeah. So I 100% still love him, still wish he was here, but there's a lot of stuff coming out now about some of the financial stuff he was doing that might have gotten us in trouble down the line, especially definitely. We know how he was perceived. Yeah. So I do think the current ownership, they are doing a better job of making sure we are trying to follow these financial laws that are in place to keep the teams in check. Obviously we know about Man City, we know about the 115, all of that. We don't want to end up in that situation because we are more likely to receive punishment than Man City are. I did massively respect BlueCO for coming out, and when they were going through the books when they took over, they brought all of this information to the FA. Do you know what I mean? I was just like, do you know what? Respect that, because there's still conversations about maybe we're looking at a transfer ban or something for it, but because we cooperated and because obviously there's I think 74 charges, isn't it? 74, $74.75.
Right.
It does look like we will suffer a bit less for that than Man City will if they are proven to be wrong in the first place.
But the other thing, a little bit more of a joke, but I will say, just because obviously with Rosenior being at Strasbourg and then coming here, if we do the same thing, like let's say Rosenior doesn't work out, and later on down the line we're like, all right, well, let's bring in the next Strasbourg manager.
Gary O'Neill. I can't have Gary O'Neill.
If we end up with Gary O'Neill, I will personally, I don't care if I go broke, I'm flying over to England and I'm just gonna, I'm punching everybody in the crotch. I don't care.
Oh mate, mate.
It'd be awful.
Man. Gary O'Neill at Chelsea would be devastating. I'm not gonna lie. To go from Graham Potter to Pochettino, to obviously Inter and Frank Lampard, to Enzo Maresca, to Rosenior, and then to Gary O'Neill.
I mean, Gary O'Neill and Graham Potter for me are basically on the same level in my mind.
Yeah. I'll be interested to see how Gary O'Neill does at Strasbourg. I'm going to start covering a little bit more of Strasbourg on my channel, actually, because especially recently, we can now just see how interconnected we are. It is so much more than just like, there's a lot of multi-club models out there, do you know what I mean? But no one is doing it like we are doing with Strasbourg. And we're still looking to extend that. I know that Chelsea want to buy a South American team. There's been talks about Santos. They're interested in a Portuguese team if that's possible as well. But yeah, you know, I think the multi-club model is a good idea, but I do worry. Like, for instance, the original noise was Callum McFarlane was maybe going to go and take over at Strasbourg. And I was like, right, okay, that makes a bit more sense. Gary O'Neill was a bit of a wild shout for me. But ultimately, we'll see how he does, man. We'll see how he does.
Yeah.
Right, so let's talk about a bit of football. So I want to talk to you like about the season so far. So like standout players, do you think that, you know, we are able to come back from where we have been? Like, for instance, I am a proponent of that massive run of form, that awful form that we've just been through. Like 2 wins in 11 games against Cardiff, and 12, now 3 wins in 12 games if you include Charlton. But ultimately, I do put a lot of that. I don't necessarily even put that down to Maresca as a manager, more as like a person, because I think that this bad run of form has been influenced mostly by the issues that have been going on behind closed doors. So I'd be interested to see what you think about the team in general, obviously just from the season that you've seen so far. What are the wins? Who is absolutely just not meant for the squad at all? And how do you think we're going to do it going forward?
So I think one of the tough parts about it is, and I think I mentioned this in the stream chat, I think part of Maresca's problem is he did tend to misprofile players. Yeah. I think we saw with Gusto, he's a great example. Under Pochettino, looked phenomenal, looked like a great replacement for James as the more right wing back.
Yeah.
And then obviously Maresca came in, tried to see if he could do the inverted fullback, and he just, outside of the Everton match, he's not been good. So it's really hard to judge a lot of these players because I don't know how many of them. I mean, João Pedro, I think he is personally meant to be a 9 that tends to drop in deep, kind of what we saw from Jackson last season. And so I think Maresca playing him at the 10, I don't think he's suited to playing there. So I think we haven't seen the best out of him since the Club World Cup because of that. But also he needs, when he is playing in that 9 dropping deep, he needs a proper 10 behind him. Yeah. And with Palmer being out, Maresca hasn't really put a proper 10. It's typically been Fernandez or Santos behind him. Yeah. So there are some players that I think they've struggled because, you know, obviously not having Palmer, he is a good creative glue in there that can help some of our attacking players be a bit more expressive. So I would say the only one for me that right now I would say is just you can't really trust him would probably be Badiashile.
Okay.
Mostly because I know he's still young, but I've seen enough from him to just be too concerned about him as a defender. Tosin, the only reason I'm not saying he's close to Badiashile, but he has had a couple of decent games this season against Burnley and against Charlton. I still don't really want to see him because obviously it's not the toughest competition to be good against. Yeah. But he was solid last season. Yeah. So I don't know what's changed this season. I don't know why he's not been playing at the same level, but he is, for me, he's been our worst performer this season. Yeah. But because of the good performances we saw last season, I do wonder if maybe Rosenior can get that back out of him. And it would be nice to have a bit more of an experienced head. You know, obviously he's the oldest in the squad, but also because he had time at Fulham before us. Yeah. Having that experience would be nice if we can get him back to where he was. But outside of that, I would say Estevao is obviously probably one of the bright sparks. I'm hoping with Rosenior coming in, Maresca didn't really seem to want to utilize him too much, so I'm hoping we could see Estevao come out a bit more and actually show what he's capable of. I do agree with the fact that he should not be playing 90 minutes every single match because he is still young.
Yeah,
you don't want to burn him out. I think Gittins, I do want to see more from him. I think he's really struggled for some reason. I don't know why, because when he started in preseason, he looked very good.
Yeah, I think it's just like a lot of players that come from the Bundesliga. So, you know, classically Chelsea, we know about this quite a lot. Kai Havertz really struggled to adapt. Timo Werner really struggled to adapt. Do you know what I mean? And for me, the Jamie Gittins thing in particular is like he's come from the Bundesliga and is struggling to get used to the pace and the physicality because he's quite a slight player. He's got quite a slight build. Do you know what I mean? Interestingly, just to mention about what you said about Tosin and Badiashile as well, I think the issues we've been seeing with them is lack of focus and lapses of concentration that lead to errors, right? This is the thing, isn't it? It's not that their all-round play is bad. Like, Badiashile's a great passer, and when he's on, like in the Liverpool game, he was wicked. He was so good. Do you know what I mean? The player is in there. And it's not necessarily about does he have the talent or the ability, but it is about concentration and focus. And this is something I think with our defence in particular, Enzo Maresca struggled to get out of the team. And I think a large problem with that was what we've had like 9 different centre-back pairings this season, man. Do you know what I mean? Absolutely mad. You can't tell me that just because Levi Colwill was injured, do you know what I mean? 9 centre-back pairings was anyone else's fault but Maresca's, like when it comes down to it. For me.
And I understand trying to rotate because with Fofana, you know, he's had such injury troubles as well.
Yeah.
You are trying to keep him fit, so you're not going to play him every match. But I think that's where you do play Chalobah every match. Yeah. Because he does seem to be more consistent and play him alongside Badiashile, play him alongside Tosin. And I think we saw too much of, all right, well, now it's going to be Badiashile and Tosin. Yeah. Now it's going to be Tosin and Achapong. It's going to be, you know, Badiashile and Hato. You know, a lot of weird pairings that like you said, it did disrupt our defense a lot this season. And so I would say overall our defense has probably been the weakest part. I know a lot of people have said that we've massively downgraded from last season. I personally disagree with that notion. I think you look at last season, we didn't have a backup for Cucurella. Now we do in Hato.
Although we didn't play until recently.
Right. We didn't have a backup really for Caicedo and Fernandez outside of Dewsbury Hall. Now we've got Santos, we've got Asugo when he's fit. And
he was in the squad for Charlton. He didn't get on the pitch, but he was on the bench for Charlton, so he's back now.
I was impressed with him in preseason. I thought he broke up play really well, similar to Caicedo. So
looked like
fingers crossed he's going to
be like 0.5. Do you know what I mean? It's like same style, but obviously nowhere near as much quality.
Right. And then up top, I mean, last season all we had was Jackson. Nkunku was not a 9. Neto was actually better up there than Nkunku was because he was just much more energetic. So this season we actually do have 2, now 3 with Guiu as well. 3 options up top.
Yeah.
So I think overall we technically have improved as a team.
Yeah.
I think the injury to Palmer didn't help, but I do think the injury to Colwill is really what decimated our defense. And I think because Tosin's dropped off massively, all we've really had to rely on back there has been Chalobah and Fofana. And since you can't play Fofana every match, Chalobah, I think, while he's a good defender, I think there are lapses in his game when it comes to concentration.
Yeah.
I think he's probably the most technically, or when I say technically, I mean defensively technically gifted. Like tackling, aerial duels, all of that is probably the best one we have.
Yeah.
But on the ball, he can be shaky, and there are times whenever he like loses track of the people around him. So I think we probably did need to go get a defender to improve that and to replace Colwill.
Yeah.
But hopefully, I've heard Colwill's pretty close to being back. Obviously, he's probably not going to be the same player.
Yeah, we're just not going to see a lot of him for the season, man. And if there's any reason to believe that, it's because look at the Cole Palmer situation, the Lavia situation. Do you know what I mean? And this injury that he's coming back from, obviously ACL tear, is like the worst in football. At the end of the day, I wouldn't be surprised to barely see anything of Levi Colwill. And I think the absolute worst thing that we could do as a team is rely on him at all. Do you know what I mean? If he gets minutes this season, it has to be cursory minutes focused on getting his fitness back and improving his match fitness, rather than we need Cole Will to play this game. Like there's kind of the issue we ran into with Cole Palmer, right? Because when Cole Palmer was having a lot of his groin issues, we were still playing him. Like the Man United game, the absolute mental sub was obviously Robert Sanchez got sent off, and Maresca took off Estevao and left Cole Palmer on. Cole Palmer was injured in that game. Do you know what I mean? So leaving Cole Palmer on, even though he was injured, said that Maresca went, I'm going to rely on an injured Cole Palmer rather than give Estevao a chance. And that is putting the player's well-being at risk at the end of the day, isn't it? Which is ultimately one of the things that would have contributed. Like being played like that and being used like that is one of the things that's contributed to Cole Palmer now not being able to play more than 60 minutes. So it's just, we've got to be super careful, man, 100%. And the defence in general, like, has just been shaky this season, obviously. You know, Reece James sort of discovering his new position. You know, he's obviously a lot better at it now, but that was difficult at the start of the season. I kind of feel the same about Tosin and Badiashile at the moment. I don't really think either of them are good enough. And if we can get rid of them two and Disasi and bring one quality, reasonably experienced defender in, when Levi Colwell's, like next season probably, when Levi Colwell's fit, Josh Achiampong with another full season under his belt, do you know what I mean? Fofana and Chalobah, I'll feel a bit more confident then. But it's kind of just too many cooks in the centre-back position, man. And none of them are really good enough.
Well, and I also think too, I mean, it depends on what type of system you're looking to play. You know, I know we'll talk about the Arsenal match in a second, but typically I think the best system that we've set up in those types of matches against the bigger teams has been, you've got Cucurella sliding in alongside two center backs with Gusto on the right, basically becoming a wing back. But in the bigger matches, or in the not as big matches, in the mid-table teams, I would say the best lineup would be Cucurella getting forward and Reece James at right back, kind of dropping in to be a part of the back three.
For sure.
Because I think while he's looked a lot better at midfield this season, I still think he is probably our best defender, just overall compared to everybody else. So I would prefer to see him in defense, and that typically is how Maresca's played us. But with Rosenior, like I've said before, the adaptability has been talked about. There's a chance he could just decide, what we're going back for. Fullbacks are not going to get up too much. If we have a lot of possession, sure, they can help out in the attack, but we're not going to see the inverted fullback as much, possibly. I would kind of prefer that, to be honest, because while Cucurella has done it well, I think a change in those tactics, a little bit more relying on our actual attacking players to show their creativity. I think that's what's going to be what breaks down these low blocks, not having our fullbacks try to be our creative players.
Yeah, man, I think that's interesting with the inverted fullback stuff, to be honest. So obviously, but it was Pochettino that introduced the inverted fullback at the end of the day. That was when, Cucurella and all of a sudden that was almost the turning point for our season, was making that change. I think the problem, I don't hate the idea of the inverted fullback, but I just think Maresca just did too much of it, man. And it wasn't even just, like, for instance, Liam Rosenior actually played Yoel Hato as an inverted fullback, and he started off a fullback but ended up playing as an attacking eight. That was okay if that is the way he's going to use the inverted fullback. I think the problem that we ran into with Maresca in particular was Malo Gusto being the biggest proponent of this. Inverted fullback as a number 6, inverted fullback as a number 8, inverted fullback as a number 10, inverted fullback as a shadow striker, inverted fullback but getting up to the left wing, literally every position on the pitch apart from right back or that number 6 for the most part. I like the idea of the box midfield, right? Because, we are not going to be playing a game with particular marauding fullbacks in general, like you say, and, the back four. Even Liam Rosenior at Strasbourg hasn't really been doing that. He has been playing Diego Moreira as a left wing back in like a back five, but he inverts into like the left forward role, essentially. So there's already some sort of precedence to say, and obviously we've seen it now with Yoel Hato as well. And we will see what continues to happen, but I don't think we'll see quite as much in the way of like inverted this, inverted that, inverted the other. I do feel like Liam Rosenior is probably going to try and keep it more simple. I like what he said tactically about the team at the moment. He's like, the team is really well coached. He's actually said mine and Maresca's tactics are not dissimilar, so he's not going to reinvent the wheel yet. And the thing he wants to focus on is like intensity, culture, engagement. Do you know what I mean? Getting the lads to enjoy playing football, but also go out there with the right mentality. And I think, tactically, we've already seen we can beat some of the best teams in the world. Do you know what I mean? We smashed Barcelona in our own backyard. We beat PSG in the Club World Cup. We beat Liverpool just before they really, really fell off. We've beaten some big teams already. So we know that the talent with this team is there. I do 100% believe it's like keep the tactics simple and focus on the slightly more intangible things. The man management side, I think, is really what's been missing for a little while now. So we'll get on to the Arsenal game. We've talked about it a little bit already, but what do you expect from the Arsenal game? We can do like a predicted 11 if you want, but like who do you expect to play? What kind of tactics do you think we might see from Rosenior?
So I think based on what we've seen in the past when it comes to going up against these big teams over the past couple of years, I do think that's something Maresca figured out is how to set up the team. I think you look at PSG, you look at Liverpool, you look at Barcelona, Arsenal when we faced them in the league this year.
Yeah,
I think he found a way to do it. I know some of this is going to be dependent on because Rosenior said not really sure about Palmer, Gusto, James just yet as far as fitness.
I think that's mind games.
Hopefully. But I think the way Maresca set us up, you've got Cucurella, Fofana, and Chalobah as kind of the three that'll stay back. Gusto, like I said, he tends to go bombing down the right side, providing an issue, which is it's what he does very well. He's got a lot of pace and energy to him. On the right wing, I'm expecting, Palmer, Estevao, somebody who they do tend to stay a little wide, but then they'll cut inside a bit more. 2 6s, which I know we don't have Caicedo, so it'll probably be hopefully James and Santos. I think would be your best bet, and then Fernandez going a little bit more forward in front of him, and then I'd love to see Neto on the left side because one thing that we saw against PSG, against Barcelona, and against Arsenal, that right back, Timber, Hakimi, for Barcelona, I don't remember who it was now.
Jules Koundé?
Yeah. They love to use that because Hakimi was tearing it up in the Club World Cup.
Yeah, man.
And so Maresca slid Neto over there to provide that backup. So now Cucurella can just focus on going up against Doué. Same thing, Saka. Timber is now being marked by Neto. Yeah. So I think that's what we're probably going to see is Neto on that left side, helping Cucurella, giving him backup defensively, but also has the pace to get down and hurt him on the other side too. And then I think at the moment, I know, Delap obviously had a pretty solid match against Charlton and then Man City as well. Yeah. Played pretty well against Fulham too actually after the red card, I thought is really where the game opened up a bit more for him. So he's looked a lot better because I think they're allowing him to play his game a lot more, which is staying up high, getting in behind the defense. But I think because there's so much interconnectivity among our front line whenever we play these big teams, I think João Pedro is going to be needed because we're going to need him to be available for his feet. Yeah. And I don't think that's part of Delap's game. So I think it's going to be better to have João Pedro up top, personally. Yeah,
I think Delap's a battering ram, and that's all fine and good, but ultimately we're talking about the biggest and best defense in the league at the moment, aren't we? So I think trickery is probably going to be, more important. And at the end of the day, Delap featured in the game the other day as well, didn't he? And João Pedro didn't. So, there's maybe something there to say that Rosenior's cooking up something. I think that generally João Pedro on his best day plays his best when Cole Palmer is on the pitch as well, because João Pedro, as you said before, he likes to drop deep. He likes to dovetail. He likes to switch out with players and stuff. And because Cole Palmer's so forward-minded, that worked in the Club World Cup because when João Pedro dropped deep, Cole Palmer knew he was like, right, I've got space, I can go, do you know what I mean? Stuff like that. So yeah, I think that would be really interesting. What's your prediction? Have you got a score prediction?
Oh man, I don't typically do score predictions because I feel like I'm always so far off. But I guess if I had to throw out a prediction, assuming we don't have any stupid red cards in the match, I would say 2-1 to us in this match. Okay. I think the second leg at the Emirates is going to be a lot more difficult. I don't see us getting a win there. So I think the best chance that we give ourselves is winning at home. And so it's going to be a close game, obviously. they're flying high right now. We're struggling, but we know we always step up against the big teams. So I expect us to give them a game, and I hope we can find the energy to get past them and get that 1-goal lead and hold on to it.
Huge game for Rosenior, man. Absolutely huge game. This is going to be like the Charlton game. The thing about the Charlton game, right, is, I said it in my review and stuff. It's like, yes, it was Charlton and we were expected to beat them. But the reason I was like relieved and really happy about that game, we've got a lot of bad results against teams that we were expected to beat. And we should be beating Charlton 5-1. Do you know what I mean? And we did. Do you know what I mean? That's so already there. I'm like, okay, so that makes me confident. But ultimately, seeing what he's going to do against Arsenal 3 times in like the next month, do you know what I mean? That's a baptism of fire if there ever was one. I like 2-1. I'll match that. I'll keep my biased Chelsea fan in me, and at the end of the day, we've done all right against the big teams. We got that draw out of City as well, do you know what I mean? And at the end of the day, we do have the players to produce a bit of magic and every now and again. So it will this game will largely come down to how well Rosenior has managed to get the team feeling good about themselves. So I think that is a wicked place to wrap it up, man. Thanks so much for joining me, Mason. Guys, this is Mason from Blues and Stripes. His channel will be linked in the description, and you can click the profile pictures and subscribe to it. Go and check it out. Really, really cool stuff. It's he gets a bit. It's funny sometimes. He proper goes in when we've had a bad day, and you know what? It's why I like watching you, man, because I always try and keep myself quite conservative and reserved. But thanks very much for coming on. I really appreciated having you here. Nice one, guys. I've forgotten again, but I've left it until the end. If you have enjoyed this video and would like to see more like it, do me and Mason the distinct honor of liking and sharing our videos, subscribe to the channels, or just roast us in the comments. Whatever gets you through your day. Nice one, guys. I hope you all have an absolutely wicked day, and I'll catch up with you very, very soon. Take it easy. Peace.